Well, good evening, everyone. So Jonathan Kovac here with Weathernow. So trying something new, a little bit different, as we're live at 9 o'clock on our Facebook group, Weathernow Timmins Kapuskasing. And I'm also on Facebook with Weathernow, giving us a try as we go live to look at the true facts, the mandate with regards to Weathernow in Northern Ontario. So I began this Facebook group back in in the year 2014. So it's been 11 years in February that I started these webcasts with a couple laptops, screenshots of weather conditions, and I just kind of made them more bloopers, I think, when it comes to making these weather shows. And it just took me a long time. It took me about 3 hours to produce a 3-minute show, which involved PowerPoints. And the whole goal to looking at Northern Ontario with this weather show was just to focus on Mother Nature's behavior in Northeast Ontario. So the idea that someone gave to me at my old workplace from way back when was the whole idea. Just give me one moment. The whole idea here was actually just to, as I experience my own bloopers right now here. There we go. So um, the whole idea was in fact just to get, this is not going to actually work probably. Walking into my first bloopers here. The beginnings, there we go. So the beginnings actually was a coworker of mine from about 11 years ago who said, well, why don't you just make your own group? So my own group really had to do with getting something going on Facebook to start. And I had already had my YouTube account started way before then, and I started sharing some videos over there too. So the beginnings involved me getting screenshots or trying to get live shots from a laptop and finding a way to put some music, like simulate the Weather Network from 1988 when it first went on the air. And I was producing these shows every so often, and I was using a program called, what was it now? I don't know if it was Pointcast. I forgot what the name of the program was, but I was using a watermark that was irritating my audience every 15 or every 20 seconds or so. Then I was asking around to some tech wizards, and they said, try XSplit. So I tried XSplit. That was a very heavy program, and XSplit was causing some problems where I could only load 4 scenes at a time, and otherwise I'd have to pay a subscription to get all these different scenes, get these screenshots organized, and try to get myself live. And at that point, I wasn't even taking screenshots with my mobile device like I am now. Everything was done from a laptop, from 2 different laptops pointing a webcam at each other, and just trying to break down the facts of what the Timmins and the Kapuskasing airports were reporting, because I thought it's so crucial that we see what the airports are reporting that the media wasn't getting. So let's say if there's a thunderstorm over Timmins or Kapuskasing, they would report, oh, there's a CV cloud over to the northwest, there's lightning cloud to ground in the northwest quadrant moving northeast. 15 to 20 minutes later, the media says, oh, by the way, there's thunderstorms nearby in Northern Ontario, just keep an eye on things. After the channel progressed and I started getting my niche in there, getting everything going, I was starting to share screenshots when I got on board with, I think it was a BlackBerry device, and eventually I moved over to an iPhone. And when I had the group growing the audience after a couple of years, there's one day that I had in the middle of summertime, I think it was June or July, and I was on my way home from the grocery store. The sky right in the middle of the day on the Saturday or Sunday just got so dark so fast, like right after lunch. And I remember watching on the radar, the Environment Canada radar, when they installed the radar up at Moonbeam. There was a couple of big long red cells, and they were moving along the Trans-Canada Highway north of Kapuskasing towards Timmins. And 2 bands went through, I think, like 3 hours apart. And I was at home and listening to the airport, and it just so happens that they reported a squall line. The winds picked up to like 50 knots, which was like 90 kilometers an hour. And you went outside like it was a beautiful day at the park. And within about 5 minutes, it was like a torrential downpour with the Atlantic Ocean washing up the whole city of Timmins. And because I had posted that screenshot to my audience, I got someone who was actually at the Timmins Square catching a bus. And at that point, that guy sent me feedback saying that my posting saved him from getting drenched in the thunderstorm, and he caught the bus just on time. Had it not been for my posting, he would have actually been soaking wet, not injured. So it was because of that information that I was able to share with the audience on my group with that screenshot in the very beginnings. That saved some people some time from actually getting drenched. And then as time went on over about 4 or 5 years, I got into making these PowerPoint presentations, trying to find the music, rehearsing the timings with the PowerPoints, making sure that the presentation is all good. Going live back then, if you're asking, was not possible because I didn't have the resources or the time for that. Unlike some other weathercasters who are on YouTube, other Facebook groups who share weather information like thunderstorms or severe weather, I'm glad they can afford the fuel and the mileage to actually get out on the road to do all that. I may be able to do that at some point. I tried going live at some point, but it didn't get me the ratings. So maybe it's just worth some kind of practice. So as the channel grew, I grew up to an audience level after 10 years of 350 people, which is remarkable. Every other weather group on Facebook and YouTube has thousands of members. So be them. My whole goal now is actually to just convey weather information, factual, just like they did in the 1980s. So when the Weather Network came on the air in 1988, September the 1st, it was 5 minutes English, 5 minutes French, and it was alternating back and forth. That was the whole goal that was written with the license from the CRTC. And back then it was Weathernow and Météo Média because they have the same number of letters in the title. So top of the hour, the programming was 3 hours during the morning, I believe, from I believe it was 8 a.m. till 11 p.m. And it was the WeatherStar computer running the show after that. And that went live again from 5 p.m. till 8 p.m. And on the top of the hour, the French had their on-air programming. The English viewers had the blue screens. At 5 after the hour, it would just flip-flop within a matter of about 2 seconds, where the English would have their 5 minutes on the air and the French would see their local forecast of music with no voiceovers. I also remember reading on a webpage, I don't remember which webpage it was, but Kim Handysides was one of the first hosts, and she was saying something about you're in a studio and there's a diagonal wall that's going from one corner of the studio to the other. So the presenters are in the studio for a couple of hours, writing the scripts, rehearsing promos in the studio. And I know that my YouTube channel has some video footage from February 1st, 1989 of Marlene Gerson on the English side wearing a black outfit, and there's a picture or video behind her, or I should say just a live see-through glass of the weather office in the control room at the Weathernow, at the Weather Network. And back then, Kim Handysides was saying it's 4 minutes and 52 seconds of an English presenter doing her thing. Then there's about a 10-second break where the English presenter changes spots with the French presenter, and the French presenter is going on for 4 minutes 52 seconds. This is all live stuff. And in May 1st, 1989, Palmerex, I believe, bought out Weathernow and changed it to the Weather Network. A new license came out with the CRTC. I think it did anyways. And that's when some of the segments were shared English and French. They would use a universal grapher for both channels with no WeatherStar, like the satellite, the destination's travel forecast, international report, to name a few segments, English, French, together, but on 2 separate audio channels. So ANIC E2, channel 1 was for the English audience, channel 2 audio was for the French audience, and sometimes that was even tough on satellite, making sure that there's no glitches. So my idea back in 2014 was to simulate that. Going French in Timmins, it won't work because I don't have a French keyboard and it's twice as time consuming to produce that. If I was in Quebec or in a French-based market, I would get onto French as well, but seeing that I work 2 part-time jobs and raise a family, it's kind of tough doing that. So that was that's the beginnings of how I started this weather gig, and I was using a green curtain. Now I just switched to blue because it's easier on the flesh tones, and that's why I'm trying to adjust my camera settings to make sure that I actually look a little bit better. Now, how do I gather the information? Well, that's going to be the next part. I can't get my mandate slide on here, but The whole mandate with Weathernow is just to promote or simulate the channel from 1988, going back retro years, taking the raw data from the airport, such as how many cloud layers are there, what's the ceiling. The ceiling is a broken or overcast layer that's above ground level. So if you've got 5 cloud layers, and the very top layer, let's say, is broken at 10,000 feet, that's your ceiling. There's 4 other layers below that. And I find a lot of people, when you just talk on the street to people about the weather, they say, well, why is Mother Nature doing this? Why is this going on like this here? And I used to answer a lot of people's questions on Facebook and on YouTube and saying, well, what's going on with the weather? And they would say, well, your answers are too technical. Why are you so technical like this? Because I like to bring back the weather network from the old days because it was more detailed back then. On June 1st, 1992, when I switched to the WeatherStar 4000, which Timmins and other smaller markets never received, you would watch the conditions on the green wood grain screen with icons. And again, Timmins never got this. If there's more than one condition being reported from the airport, the weather network would only display the one condition. The WeatherStar 3000, which everyone had in Canada, would display up to 5 conditions: thunderstorm, light rain showers, fog, mist, haze, the whole works. Now in 1994, the Weather Network went their own separate way to Mississauga, Oakville, and the French moved across the street to a different office so that they can broadcast separately. I don't have cable TV at home, but I have watched the Weather Network on cable, and I find that they lack presenting weather to smaller markets or communities, whether it's live or pre-recorded. And I also find when you watch them on a certain, like Saturday night or a Sunday morning, they spend a whole hour just showing videos of weather and environmental stories. I guess maybe they don't have enough revenue to put someone in front of a camera. That's where I come into play. So when you watch my shows, and you can see the banner on the bottom, that's the actual current conditions from Timmins Cap Airport. I just find it so important that we decipher the weather between 2 different Northern Ontario sites, and we can understand the weather 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Before I got this, I'm showing you this, the blue bar there. So I got the clock on the top right, top left over here to show you what's going on. And on the bottom, it's Timmins Cap Airport. I have a JavaScript online program that runs on my computer 24/7. And it took me about 2 months, the whole summer, to get ChatGPT to render all this. So this is something that I feel more comfortable with. And it allows me to record pre-recorded segments or practice live like I'm doing right now. And this gives me an opportunity to say, well, look, Northern Ontario, this is what we're doing for weather conditions here. And if I'm online for a few hours, even on the nice day, I'll run the WeatherStar for a few hours and take a break and do an update. What I'm waiting for is another good weather event where we have thunderstorms, maybe our first autumnal weather advisory for freezing rain. Not that we're hoping for it. Maybe another dense fog advisory. My WeatherStar doesn't render Environment Canada's weather alerts, and fetching weather from another website for live weather warnings for Timmins and Kapuskasing. That's a little bit tough. I have to say, I don't have that set up. It was set up, but then it fell apart. So the whole thing with my WeatherStar as well, if you've been noticing, is I was using a Timmins and Kapuskasing 2-day weather planner from OpenMeteo that ChatGPT got for me because ChatGPT was not able to render live weather parsing from the Weather Network. It tried with Environment Canada, but it really slowed down my OBS broadcaster, which I'm using now. I tried using Prism Broadcaster, Streamlabs, and I'm using Restream to simulcast this show on YouTube and on Facebook at the same time, and it was very heavy. I actually had to pause the program after 5 minutes because there was a lag on it. Anyways, I'm going to take a small break. I'm going to go check for messages, guys, and I'll be right back in just a few minutes. Stay tuned. Okay, folks, so I'm back. Took a small break just to look at things. So since this is my live first broadcast, it's a little bit difficult, challenging right now, I can say, but the audience will grow at some point, and I'll just have to produce or post advertise the start dates and times. I'm not too sure how often I can go live with this. Nonetheless, the whole mandate, I have a lot of fun doing this. The mandate with the show, again, is just to feature weather retro style from the 1980s for Northeast Ontario. So the geographical coverage is Timmins, Matheson, Iroquois Falls, Cochrane, Smooth Rock Falls, Caphurst, and I used to touch base with Moosonee, but not so much because I don't really have the audience from up there anymore. The other problem I learned of on my own is I had to rebrand my Facebook profile once or twice in 6 months, and that unfortunately caused me to lose my 300 plus group members. And I've restarted again on a new Facebook group through my Facebook profile. And I've got one recurring member from Matheson. His name is Wayne, one of my top-notch fans. So I want to thank you very much, Wayne, for being there. And he's from Matheson, and he gives me a lot of information of what goes on in Matheson. So I've lost my audience, but I'm slowly but gradually rebuilding the audience brand. On my YouTube channel, 586 subscribers now, and that's more of a worldwide watchdog, so to speak, because there's a lot of WeatherStar emulators like myself who make their own products, especially for the US. There's a guy, I think his name is Matt Gibb, and he's got a website called GitHub, and I know a lot of Americans only use that because the software that's pre-built is only made for the Americans, but there's some Canadian users, Montreal and I think Winnipeg, who are using or building up a WeatherStar 4000. It doesn't work for Timmins because my geographical coordinates are too far away from there. So I just want to thank ChatGPT for helping me out make this. So whenever there's a small problem with the script that I have that fabricates my WeatherStar 3000, I just have to go to ChatGPT for 5 minutes, correct the syntax error, and boom, I'm on the air again. So I try to go live as much as I could. Like, this is my first live. That's a little bit overwhelming. I'm not as prepared as I like to be, but time will tell. And I know that sometimes I get more views on my YouTube channel with WeatherStar emulators than I do with my actual products. There's some other weather fans out there, like I believe it's Instant Weather. They're live all the time and they get thousands of views. I'll get there at some point. Then again, I multitask a lot off the air with raising a family and with working side gig work, as well as a part-time job from 7 to 9 and 2 to 4 Monday to Friday. So, but when it comes to weather, I've been passionate about the weather since 1986, and I used to record thunderstorms with a Texas Instrument cassette recorder. Used to listen to a French radio station in Timmins to try to learn the French stuff. Used to watch the Weather Network in French, Météo Média from Ottawa. I have a relative who actually sent me some video cassettes of that channel. It's too bad it was sent to me after the channels that were sharing the same satellite channel split apart. But nonetheless, it's still a good learning opportunity. So Weathernow, Northern Ontario, it's the old brand name. I changed the name 4 or 5 times in the last 10 years. That may have confused some people. So if anyone's watching this on Facebook, you're welcome to join. There's a Timmins Weather Facebook page itself. It's like a business page, and anyone can tune into that. I know I've got a gentleman named Yves Roy from Quebec who is my only member there, but I'd seen that my video has been shared once, and I have 20 to 30 views per 3-hour time slot of broadcasting. So that's a big help too. So I'm looking to grow the audience. I'm looking to engage my audience from whether you're in Timmins, whether you're in South Porcupine, which doesn't get enough recognition, by the way, or anywhere else around Northern Ontario. And I like to be able to share with information as live as possible, because some media outlets take too long to report what's going on. So with the ticker and the banner on the bottom of the screen, like this WeatherStar computer right over here, you try to point like this here, like I'm pointing the right way or the wrong way here. This gives you up to the minute current conditions. With the WeatherStar, half the pages that I'm building, I think there's like 10 or 11 pages in my WeatherStar loop that actually makes the blue screens behind me go. Half of them, for me, I render them manually. So I spend about a half hour typing up Environment Canada's forecast, because the Weather Network's forecast change a little bit too often sometimes. And I find Environment Canada's scheduled forecast is a lot more structured and easy to use. Plus, I look at Nav Canada's forecast. That's the airport terminal forecast, Environment Canada, the Weather Network, and Instant Weather. Even during a bad weather day, not all those forecast sources are on the same page, so it's tough to gauge what's going on. If I'm not live, I'm pre-recording myself, but using the live timestamp just to make it seem live so that the product can be natural. Now that I'm programming a WeatherStar for about a half hour and still using PowerPoint slides to show icons, that's a little bit time consuming as well, but I do it for the pleasure of my heart and my spirit to say that this is how I'm trying to promote weather in Northern Ontario. The regional forecasts and observations, that's just like an added top up to my products and material. That's so that anyone who's watching this from outside of the Northern Ontario viewing area can feel welcome to Northern Ontario, from the Muskoka, Val-d'Or, Chapleau, Sault Ste. Marie, Earlton, Sudbury, North Bay, because a lot of people do travel in and out of those areas. And if you're visiting even in Timmins from out of town, you can still tune into this as well. My channel is completely commercial free. I do have a bulletin board that does say, leave your message here. So if you want to share a message with an audience member, or with myself, or with somebody else, you're more than welcome to do that. I'm even willing to try to help promote people who are trying to grow a business or just want to grow their own group as well, like I have, and a lot more as well. Just headlines that I update every 3 to 4 hours based on observations from the airports, satellite radar pictures, and the weather systems. So that's just my niche of how I like to do things my own way. Commercial free weather, which is great. I'm not promoting any advertisement at all. It may take me a couple of years to regrow the channel back up to maybe at least 100 members. It took about 10 years to get 300 members, so I think it'll do the same thing here. I don't want to be like anybody else. I just like to be very unique with the way that I present weather from Mother Nature. And as time goes on, my production time will definitely improve. So if you have any questions, drop me a line. Weathernow Timmins on YouTube, and you can also send me a line. There's a Facebook weather group called Weathernow Timmins, and there's a Facebook page on Facebook that is just as Timmins Weather. And if anyone wants to throw a comment or give me feedback on what you want to see me do more of or less of, and how you want to interact with me, just feel free to drop me a line. So we're coming up to 9/26 on this first day of October, and I just want to say from Mother Nature's perspective, what a beautiful day today. The temperature is not quite up to 20 degrees, no record breakers, but the temperatures are very pleasant. And just as we go on through the evening, that we do have some high-level clouds moving in, about 2 to 3 layers between the mid and high level. And for the long-term forecast, there might be a couple of weather systems that are just on the west of our viewing area that might start slipping through into our region with maybe warmer temperatures, not quite 30, but we're going to almost make it up to there, and maybe some scattered showers on and off just in time for the weekend, of course. So my name is Jonathan Kovac, once again, executive producer, learning to do things all over again with Weathernow, Northern Ontario. So I know I didn't get too many live members, but that's what reruns are all for. So we're going to wrap things up. It's 9:27, and for those of you who did drop by for a few minutes, thank you very much. And we'll try to figure out another date and time to go live with this open forum, and I'll try to figure out how to answer any questions. So from Weathernow Timmins, we want to thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you again next time. Stand by for more pre-recorded weather segments as well as the WeatherStar computer.